Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. This will be part 2 and the final part of the inner frame stuff for the real grade Sazabi. I think anything more than this will get a little monotonous, and as you can see, I've already base painted the rest of the parts for the inner frame. I wanted to go ahead and do that and get to something I kind of glazed over in the first part, which was the detail painting. If you want to know more about how to get the metallic look onto the parts, just watch part 1. I go way more in detail and actually show me spraying these parts and getting them to this point, where in this video I'll be already at that point, and I want to talk about, the techniques and show me more, doing detail painting with hand brushing and toothpick painting and all that. Because as you can see, I mean, the parts look really good whenever they're all metallic, but, it's very ostentatious. It's one color. I mean, yes, it is very metallic. It looks metal. But, there's no real excitement with it, where, that's the power of detail painting. A little bit of detail painting to pick out some pieces and parts of the piece will make a big difference. Take this part, for instance. The recessed areas is what I like to target mostly for the most, abrasive, changes. I want to use contrast, so I'm going to use a darker color in these to make them stand out, to break up the monotony of all of this silver. And that's kind of what I focus with, and that's what I wanted to talk about in this video, is how do you know where to put, detail painting? And the honest answer is anywhere you want, but I'll go through what I think of whenever I do this. And so in this piece, I want the silver to kind of be the outer cage and the outer, metal pieces of this inner frame, and I want the inner mechs of the piece, so treat this as a three-dimensional, entity, or multi-dimensional entity, where, in there are more pieces. And so, the inner mechs I want to do in a gray. You could do it in gunmetal, heck, you can do it in gold, whatever you wanted, but I just want to, put some color in there so as to make it where it's something different. There's another layer to this piece. And then you got pieces like this where, you could just pick out the raised pieces, in a different color, or just strictly panel lining would actually do a big thing for this piece. And this piece in particular has little hoses and stuff running through it, as you can see there. And the theme I've been doing with this is, I do the hoses in gold or brass, so I would actually pick that out. It may never be seen again, but I know it's there, and if it is seen again, then you'll see a little bit of gold flashing through there, and it'll make a big difference. And then you got pieces like this, which are a lot of solid plating, where, just a little bit of panel lining might go through, and just a couple paint apps, maybe the little piece in the circle there, maybe make that gold or copper. So there's really no rhythm or rhyme to what why you do this and what you do with it, but just have fun with it and add some character to these pieces so that whenever you display it, you're happy with it, and, it just takes away from the monotony of just one color. So with that, I'm going to get reset, and I'll go over what I use whenever I detail paint. Okay, so now I'm a little bit more set up. I always put a piece of paper towel down whenever I'm doing this. It never works because I have paint all over my cutting mat, but it limits, the mess. But what I use for detail painting over lacquer paint is enamel paint. And in this case, in this build, I'm using Model Masters Gunship Gray, and that'll be the gray that I use for the inner frame, I guess you could say. Gold, that, you know, for any little, you know, picked out pieces I want. Some chrome silver. I've actually yet to use this on this inner frame so far, but you never know, I might use it. And copper, which I have used quite a bit. And I have 2 tiny brushes. This is a 0 here, and this is a 10-0 here. This is a round brush, this is a spotter brush. You know, this one's very, very tiny. This one a little bit bigger, but I like to use the bigger one more. Of course, toothpicks, because toothpicks are what I really like to use to do the metallic paints with. They make a really smooth, you know, finish, and I'll go into more of that later. Gaia Notes brush cleaner with some enamel thinner in it. This thing is really cool. Whenever you are getting ready to change colors or whatnot, you just dab it down in there and, you know, push the brush through these little, whatever these things are, and it cleans your brush. And then lighter fluid to use with the Finish Master to take off any mistakes that you make, which I go through in the last video, where, you know, if you make a mistake with the enamel paints, you can take the enamel paints off with lighter fluid without damaging the lacquer paints underneath, as long as you let the lacquer paints cure. Not just dry, but cure. So with that being said, we'll move on to actually painting a part. First and foremost, I do want to say that I generally do not thin my lacquer paint or my enamel paints before I paint. Because honestly, they're good enough for little bitty pieces. If I was doing a really big surface, then yeah, but I'm not. I'm doing really little details with it, so it's good enough as is to me. But basically what I do is get a little bit on the brush, right? And I usually start in the center of one of these pieces, and I push the paint, okay? I don't really pull the paint much. I more push it towards the edge so that it gets, I guess you could say, trapped in the shape that it's supposed to be. So like this piece over here, I would actually go in at this angle due to the nature of that being to a point, and I would begin it, and then I would push it towards that end, and I would turn it around and push it to that end, and just make sure you have enough on your brush. You know, if you put a little too much in there, you can always use the Finish Masters to take it back out. And you know, I'll use a couple of these pieces as guinea pigs for the video, and then maybe time lapse me doing a couple others, but you'll get the gist of it after a while, and I don't want to bore with just doing the same thing over and over and over again. But you can see how smooth that's actually going in, and you know, if you thinned it a little too much, it would just run everywhere. And that's why I think for little details like this, it's already at a good, you know, consistency to do things like this. And that one pretty much filled in already by itself, but I'll push a little bit more in there. And like I said, don't worry if you go over a little bit, you know, outside the lines. It'll be fine, because you can go over it with the Finish Master or a cotton swab. That works too later, and you know, get that back out and crisp up those lines. So don't worry if you make a mistake. This part is actually really good for people like me sometimes that aren't the most steady-handed person in the world, because this part you can literally just mess up and erase, and that's very nice. And there we go. I mean, I got 2 more little pieces to do there, but you get the idea. Is you see how much it breaks up And once it dries, it'll show those details really well, being, you know, not so shiny, and really add a lot of character to this part, more than it already has. Okay, so now that the other piece is done, this piece has had a little bit of time to dry up a little bit. So what we'll do is take our finish master, put a little lighter fluid on it, and just go over the edges. Try my best to get this in frame for you. And as you can see, with just a little bit of lighter fluid and a finish master, you can crisp up those lines and get everything looking nice. Okay, so this I think will be a perfect little piece to demonstrate the toothpick painting on. As you can see, I've gone in with the gray and bordered this circle just to, you know, add some difference to the part, but I want to make the center circle not brass. I'm thinking of making it silver. So grab a toothpick, and this thing has a nifty little handle to hold, so that makes it even better. But you just get a little bit on there, and with the toothpick, the way that I like to think about it is, let me get a little bit out of here, is it's kind of like welding in a way, right? Where in welding, you make a puddle out of molten metal, and you stay in that puddle, and you just kind of pull that puddle in different directions. But as long as you stay in the puddle, it will come out smooth. I know that's probably a bunch of gibberish, but in my mind it works. That as long as you stay in the puddle and go back to the puddle whenever you start back, you just kind of pull the paint outwards, or, you know, sideways or wherever, but as long as you stay in that puddle and you're moving the puddle of paint, you know, it's with the toothpick, it just makes a lot of smooth surfaces. As you can see, I mean, that is really smooth, and it's because it doesn't have bristles. When you run into bristles, you have brush strokes and all that good stuff, whereas with this, there's no brush strokes. It's just a, you know, blunt surface or blunt tool moving liquid around, and as long as you stay in that liquid, you'll come out with a very smooth finish at the end. like that right there. Okay, so as I said earlier about this part, how it has hoses in it, right? Those hoses would be really hard to get to under normal circumstances with a brush. I mean, you could get a little tiny brush in there, and you know, I probably could do that, but the end of a toothpick is mighty sharp, and it is, you know, very long. So I use the toothpick to do a lot of this kind of stuff because, as I said before, it leaves a very smooth finish on metallics in general. I mean, or specifically. And you just kind of work at it, dragging it over until you get the desired color. You know, it might not even be showing up on camera because it takes quite a bit of layers with the gold over top of the silver for the gold to really start popping, but it will. You can see it a little bit better there, how it's starting to turn gold. You just kind of work at it, but like I said, with this you have a lot of control, and with a little patience you will get that to look like gold without making a mess everywhere, because down in here would be very hard to clean up. And there we go, you see it's gold. Now next, on this same piece, now that we have some nice gold little paint apps in here, I want to switch up gears and put some copper around the outside of this part. And load up a little bit on here. I'm going to start here and pull towards me. So get some on the end there. Pull upwards. As you can see, there's some copper on there. Okay, ladies and gents, that will wrap up part 2 of the inner frame build, which will be the last of the inner frame build. As I said before, I don't want to get too repetitive with the inner frame stuff because most of it is the same thing just over and over again. But I can show off what I have been working on in this video. This will be what it looks like complete after top coat and partially assembled. As you can see, this is partially assembled due to you know, the lower half of the arm being the two sandwiched together outer armor pieces. But we'll take a closer look here. As you can see, that gray on top and that gray in the middle really breaks it up, gives it a different feel. Otherwise it would have just been completely brass. Up here I did use the Molotov chrome pin on a couple places, the side here where the little screw looking thing is, and the center areas here. But up top even, that little bit of gold, it breaks it up, gives it character. There's not as much detail in this as there is, of course, in his big old honkin' leg. I used the chrome pin on the center part here and then the center part on the ankle. But the biggest dramatic changes that the you know, detail painting did was on the bottom of the foot. You could definitely see how that could have been just one color and it would have been fine, but with this, you know, background painting on there, you know, the recessed area painting, it just brings it to life to a whole new level. up here in the leg, as I demonstrated earlier in the video. It really breaks it up, and then if we do this, you can see down in there, all those hoses are shown. They're in the gold. You know, I got a little bit of copper picked out here and there. That makes a world's difference. And that kind of stuff will be shown, you know, after everything is assembled with the armor. So, you know, it's really nice. And then under here, you know, those hoses running down in gold, those will also be seen, you know, if you look under there as well. So that's the power of a little bit of detail painting. It goes a long way. It you know, makes it from just one monochromatic, ostentatious look to breaking it up a little bit and making it a little bit more pleasing to the eye, and making it feel more dimensional than it really is. You know, it really feels like a mechanical, you know, piece of robot, to me at least. And, you know, there's a lot of people that say, oh, you know, why are you painting the inner frame up? You know, you're never going to see it again. And that may be true for a lot of it, but to me, in my mind, I know I've done a good job, as far as my standards go. Whenever it's done, it's done. It's completely done. If I was to take the armor off at any time to show someone, this is what's laying underneath and not just the gray plastic that, you know, would have been under there in the first place. So, I will have the full inner frame together in a future video, and I will be showing that off in a little bit more depth. As of right now, like I said, I do not have the outer armor pieces started yet, so I cannot build it yet. But I will have it in a video in the future, I promise. But that's going to wrap this one up. So a like and subscribe would be appreciated if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.